afternoon. Apologize for being late. I'm Councilwoman Ortiz. I am the chair. And beside me is, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Aaron Mays, District 7.
Karen Hiller, District 1.
Okay. First thing we want to do is call this meeting to order and approve the August 12th, 2019 minutes. I know we have some other people coming over because they too were at the wrong place. So I think they'll be coming in a second. So.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. I did know that you had some things that you corrected, is that correct? I seen that email that there were some things that.
It was structural, really. There was a redundancy in the first sentence, and she had left a note to herself in the middle, and she corrected them this morning and sent them back out.
Okay.
So I think that what we have here is
Okay.
final.
And I always say that these are the minutes, they don't have to be accurate, but it's how she takes them. But if that's what you're saying, she left a couple of notes in that we don't need.
It was just a couple notes that it said go back to line 16 and 17 and fill in or something like that.
Okay.
Was
Okay.
a note to herself.
All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, thank you. Updates on the camping ordinances. We'll start with Officer Clan. He always does a good job. I guess over here. This is really bringing me back. When I first came to the council, we were all crammed in this little room, so I'm trying to get used to this again.
All right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So the biggest updates that I have, we had an event that a lot of us were participated in that we just kind of nicknamed the Block Party. This was a rescue mission of Vallejo and a TPD brainstorm. And the big idea was to get to better know our campers back behind the mission in the North Topeka encampment. Better understand them, understand where they're coming from and what their biggest barriers are so we know how to best help them. From that, I'll hand out, this is a little excerpt from the actual report, but I thought this would be the most prevalent information you guys would like.
Thank you.
So you can see on there, I just had 4 categories. So just their individual's date of birth, their address, or where we're considering where their camp is now, where they're from, and what their biggest barrier is. And if you go to the very, very bottom, I kind of averaged a few things up for you. So the average camper behind the rescue mission, the average age is 41 right now. We had 40 people fill out questionnaires while they were at our event. I think there were a few more individuals who attended the event than filled out applications or filled out questionnaires, but this is the information that we had. Of those 40, 24 were from the North Topeka encampment, and then the others were various locations from Central Topeka, North Topeka, Oakland, things like that, and you can kind of see through there. As far as one of the questions I get asked a lot is, are these individuals from Topeka? And you see there's a lot of NAs, individuals, this was all voluntary. If they didn't want to provide the information, we didn't force it. But out of the 26 locations of birthplace, 16 were from Topeka. So there's actually quite a few Topekans down there in that North Topeka encampment. And then the last one, the biggest barrier, I think most people immediately go to mental health or immediately go to addiction, which I do think are issues back there. But self-described biggest barrier from those individuals is income and lack of ability to find a job. So that better helps us when we start talking about another event or different people we can take back there to help them move from where they're at to hopefully housing and to better their situation. This gives us a little bit better idea where to go instead of us just kind of brainstorming. Like you see on their transportation is an issue. There's several people who have mentioned IDs, which I can immediately help with. And then, like I said, the income and the job is the biggest issue that we're gonna start focusing on. So.
This is awesome.
Thank you. Like I said, it's not just me. The rescue mission did a fantastic job. Vallejo did a fantastic job. It really was a big effort. The homeless task force was fantastic on gathering items for us to help give out. Bug spray, tents, sleeping bags, toilet paper, all types of stuff like that. And so they were instrumental as well. So it really was a really big community effort for these individuals. And we had a good showing as well. So.
Well, this is awesome to everybody. It's awesome. It's kind of an eye-opener to me. I mean, you know, I just think homeless as certain issues, but there are a lot of issues, so this is awesome. Okay. We'll need one more for Officer or Sergeant
I'll be
Cline.
okay. I see that.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody from the panel have any questions regarding this? Karen or Councilman Mays? Any?
Go ahead.
I too heard good things about it. The question would be, my understanding is that you also outfitted the area with porta potties,
Yes.
hand washing.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So for the event, we talked about porta potties, hand washing stations, things of that nature. Vallejo picked up the tab for, if I recall correctly, 3 porta potties and 2 hand washing stations for a month. And the Shawnee County Health Department is going to pick it up for the next 2 months. So we not only had those sanitary conditions, down for the event, they've stayed down there since then, and they will for the next 2 months. Again, Vallejo picked up the first month, and then the Shawnee County Health Department's going to pick up the next 2. So we have 3 porta potties down there currently, 2 hand washing stations, and these folks can talk better since they're down there. But if I understand correctly, they're being serviced weekly, and they've even talked about potentially having to do it bi-weekly because they're getting so full. So, but yes, that all is down there currently right now. So good improvements. Thank you.
Well, I think this is great information. I mean, I guess my question is, how are you using the information that you've gathered?
So we had we have a small work group. Again, it's mainly myself, Vallejo, and the rescue mission, and then we have a much bigger work group that involved many more partners, not only from Vallejo but from the homeless task force. So we have a meeting tomorrow, the small work group. It's either tomorrow or the next day, and we'll go over this data. This just came out. It was either Friday or I think it was Friday. So we're going to go over the data and then kind of brainstorm because we'd like to do some more events down there. And again, so like if we know that income and jobs is the #1 barrier, so now we just need to start brainstorming like how do we work around that barrier. I mean that's not my specialty, so we're going to have to start reaching out and discussing those. So that's like the idea is understanding what the biggest barriers are and start knocking those off the list. The individuals on here that need ID, I think there's 3 to 5 that identified their IDs their biggest issue. Well, we'll get in contact with them within the next week and start seeing what we can do about IDs and what the issue is there. So that's kind of what our plan is with this information. This is going to be a living document, because honestly, and I don't have any names on this one, but whoever this top person is, they might not be down there anymore. They easily could have moved out. I mean, it ebbs and flows down there as far as population, and there's a core group that's always down there that's their main area, but there's a bunch that they're kind of transient on top of it. So it's a living document that we'll have to continue to work with.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
So.
All right, Corey, you're on deck. Thank you. Because Corey's going to tell us how we can get us some jobs.
I can certainly help with that, but I'm not sure that I'm the expert on that. So as far as Shelter Plus Care, we still have a waiting list. We just opened up the waiting list here recently and pulled some people off the waiting list. None of them were being referred from outside camping areas right now. We do have opportunity for referral of 3 outside camping individuals to be referred to Shelter Plus Care. However, that we do have a list of about 15. So the list of 15 will probably take maybe 2 months to go through those 15, and then we can take 3 a month just to make sure that all of our partners have equal access to Shelter Plus Care. So that's our plan. Of the 46 individuals and the 37 people that we housed, the last time we only had 1 since we met last time. that has lost their housing. So we're still standing very, very well with the ones that we've housed that are still housed. So if we can get that list going again and get some more referrals happening, then hopefully we can pull some more people and have even more success. So
Could you repeat the number, the one of 37?
we housed, we gave out 33 vouchers and we had 25 households. So we housed 76% of the people that we gave vouchers to. And 22 of that 25 are still housed. So we've only had 3 that were unsuccessful once we housed them. So we think that the Homeless Task Force thinks that's pretty good, significant, being that there's some mental health, substance abuse, all kinds of barriers that are preventing them from remaining successfully housed.
Okay, any questions
Yep.
for Corey? None? Okay, do you have anything from the task force? Or is there-
Carrie is here
Oh,
she's the
great.
chair of the Homeless Task Force, if you would like to.
Sure. Do
Check
you have
with her.
anything else?
Nope, that's
for me,
it.
Corey? Okay.
That was it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Carrie, please state your name and,
I am Carrie Higgins, the chair of the Homeless Task Force. I don't necessarily have anything to report, but I'm open to any questions you may have.
yes.
Could you just briefly list who the active members are anyway on your task force regarding this?
We've had 55 different individuals attending the meetings. It's the majority of all the emergency aid agencies in town.
Can you just get us a list?
I can get you a
Yeah.
list, absolutely.
Because
That's good, I mean, it
Yes.
helps that it's 55, not 5.
Yes.
For instance.
Yep, the group is growing in size as well.
I think everybody's there. Red
good.
Cross, everybody, yeah.
DCF, all the agencies,
Yeah. So if you
Yeah,
could
we
just
will
us
get you a list.
that'd be great.
absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Any questions for me?
For Carrie?
No?
No? Well, okay. Okay, let's see. Barry, would you like to come forward, add anything? Take away anything? You're on deck. So hit home run.
Can't sit back there and say no. So, no, I just think it's a phenomenal effort that has come together from wondering what we were looking at, wondering why it had grown so much. And I believe that there is a good effort and a synergy that's going on for finding solutions for everybody. So I think that we got a lot yet to learn, but we've learned a lot.
Yes.
And so if we can take this momentum, carry it forward, it's going to be great for the whole community. It's going to be great for the unsheltered. It's going to be a healthier community going forward. So I think that this is one of the more encouraging outreaches of everybody coming together that I've ever seen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Barry?
No?
No?
Okay, thank you.
Home run, kids. All right. Sorry. Oh, yeah. Dr. Russell,
Yes, ma'am.
do you have anything to report? You've been so strongly at bringing people to the table. Would you like to say a few words?
I appreciate that. It depends on where we are.
You have to go to the microphone for the people at home, please.
Both of them.
Depends on where we are. If we're just kind of reviewing the conditions down on the river, I have just a couple of things that I might say, and I know some folks from the river could speak to the advantages of the porta potties down there, but that is truly an amazing thing, and it's absolutely well appreciated down there. They did a good job with that. The block party was a big success, as Clem reported. I would like to encourage City Council, however, to come down and spend some time with their constituents down there. It was a nice time. There's barbecue down there. I think there'll be a larger variety of food this next time. So please come down and hang out with your folks. I believe some of the Democratic folks running for City Council 2, I believe it is, Clears Council, I believe they'll be down there. So just thought I'd share that. I have some comments in general about the ordinance. Maybe I should wait for that later. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, did I miss anybody? Okay. All right, we're going to move on. We are going to talk about the proposed public camping ordinance. Do we want to start with you, Lisa, or Luther? Who's going to talk about it? Karen? Who? They're on deck, whoever it
Luther's going to
is.
start off. We initially proposed a complete ban, but we have talked a little bit more, and what we have before you, I think at tabs 2 and 3, you'll have a tracking and the clean version, is a partial ban. So Luther's going to kind of walk through that and talk through some of the pros and cons.
Okay. Before you start, Luther, I would like us to give him all of our attention. He will have a time to speak or to talk on this, but right now it's something that we're proposing, that we're looking at. It's not set in stone. We're not taking away. We're not adding. It's just something that we want to look at. So I don't want everybody to get bent out of shape here. We're going to respect him and give him our full respect and listen to what he has to say in some of our comments. And then there'll be a time that I will listen to your comments if you have some at the end of the meeting as well. Okay, with that being said, Luther, please.
Okay. What I'm going to talk about is really related to what the committee's options are at this point. And the proposed ordinance banning camping completely on private property and on all public property has been before this committee for quite some time, and you've heard a number of different presentations about it. And basically what we've run into is the inability to go further with potentially passing that ordinance because of the shortage of shelters, the shortage of available options for somebody that doesn't have any other choice but to sleep in public. If they can't sleep here, where can they sleep? And typically, well, what we've looked at is shelter beds, emergency shelter for a night or two, hotel vouchers. We even looked at starting our own campground, and we've worked through all of those options, and we haven't come up with anything. So really, as far as a total ban on camping on all public property, we really don't have any ability to proceed further with that ordinance unless we figure that out. It simply won't be constitutional if we do that, because you cannot criminalize homelessness. And a person has to have a choice on where they can sleep for the night.
So what I'm hearing you say is, in order to pass this ordinance, we have to offer them a place to stay when we come to them, when we come upon them, and we have to say, we have to offer them a place to stay. And
There has to be
and we don't have that right now.
Right.
And not only that, you know, I know some people have said, well, they can go to the mission. Well, we haven't proposed that. And so basically, this committee has not come up with a plan to do that. So therefore, we won't be able to move forward with this ordinance without that in play, correct?
Yes.
I know that kind of went around.
The cities that have been successful in defending a complete ban on camping are cities that have sufficient shelter space available to handle their homeless population, where they don't have to turn anybody away. They've never turned anybody away. Their shelter has never been at capacity. Or they have some other alternative, like a designated campground or something like that, where there is a choice for that person that is homeless. They can't sleep at this particular place, and they have a choice to sleep somewhere else. We don't have that option figured out here locally where we could do that. So that's the first option, is the total ban on camping would be, if you were to pass that, I guess the legal department is recommending that you don't pass that because of constitutional concerns. Second option, this is one we came up with recently about, and what this really recognizes is that the ordinance in front of this committee has resulted in a lot of good things happening. A lot of people have been helped while you have been considering this ordinance. The idea of a partial ban is something that we believe would help keep that momentum, but it would also accomplish a secondary purpose of protecting a few areas that we have the most concern with. So what the partial ban would do is it would prohibit camping under bridges and overpasses, on levees, and on bus shelters, bus stops. And all of those things are listed in the partial ban ordinance that's been drafted for your consideration, and they've all been sources of potential problems that have come up that we've had to address through our police department and other city resources on how to deal with individuals camping in those specific areas. It's based on the idea of protecting certain pieces of infrastructure.
Where am I finding that, Luther?
I believe it's tab 3.
Tab 3. Okay, I see it. Okay.
Now, as I said, this is a partial ban because it does not ban camping citywide. It does not ban camping on all public property. It bans camping in very specific areas. Those areas that are not listed in here, obviously the big one would be the riverfront. That would be not covered by this ordinance. People would remain free to camp there. They could camp on other public property as well. Obviously, if it's not a bridge or an underpass or any of the other places listed in here, it's public property. They're going to potentially be able to camp there as long as it's not covered by some other rule. And by what I mean by that is like a park, for instance. Camping in a park would not be allowed because the park has its status as a park. It has a posted closing time. The city parks are closed from 11 to 7. So a person would not be able to camp in a public park overnight. Sidewalks would be another potential area. A person could lay down and sleep on a sidewalk as long as they're not blocking it. We have city ordinances already that say that there has to be a clear pathway for a person to use the sidewalk. As long as they're not blocking the sidewalk, they'd probably be okay under this. So it bans camping in certain areas, but it leaves certain areas open as an alternative. They can't sleep here, but they can always go over here and sleep along the river or sleep over here in this other vacant lot or something like that. The benefit of doing this is because it's only a partial ban and there is an alternative available to somebody, we don't need to have shelter space or an option to provide them with a bed for the night, because that already exists since they can go somewhere else and camp legally.
Did this address the front of the stores?
It does not. And the front of the store will be, we thought about that and considered it, and the front of the store is generally either going to be private property, which would be subject to a criminal trespass type of call for law enforcement. If the owner of the property doesn't want them there, then the person would have to leave or move on, or the law enforcement officer could either issue a citation or make an arrest. If it's public property, then the person could be there provided that they're not blocking the sidewalk. We have an ordinance already that covers obstructions of sidewalks, things like that. And as long as they're not blocking it, they could be there.
Okay, if I may, it was my understanding how this, and somebody can correct me if on the panel if I'm, is my understanding how this come about was because the storefront owners in Noto were upset with the trash and people camping, and the officer said they didn't have any teeth to bite or to do anything. That's why this was so important to get this passed, so they could get them off the steps and out of,
There's
out of
been
their
a
area.
number of things that led to the discussion of this ordinance. That was certainly one of them. Another one was individuals camping on the city easement, the grass area next to the sidewalk. Individuals camping there at outside the law enforcement center and across the street from the rescue mission.
Right, right.
We've had situations with people either camping overnight or accumulating a large amount of property inside bus shelters. I've spoken with some of the representatives of the Topeka Metro bus folks, and they've had a number of concerns about individuals that are not customers of the bus using their bus shelters simply to lay down or whatever. Then, in addition to that, we've had a number of issues with individuals accumulating large amounts of personal possessions underneath bridges and overpasses. And, obviously one rather large fire that resulted from that on the Kansas Avenue Bridge. There's some other bridges around town that law enforcement's familiar with where there's a number of individuals under there that have a large amount of stuff accumulated under those bridges that if it were to catch fire, we could have a similar type of problem. The same thing with the levees. There's a concern there with individuals accumulating things on a levee itself that may obstruct the functioning of the levee or somehow interfere with it. Even removing riprap or something like that that's been placed on the levee in order to make a suitable place, a comfortable place for somebody to lay down. Those are the kinds of things that if you were to rank things of importance on what we want to protect, our bridges and overpasses, our levees, and our bus system. So that's how we developed this list, was largely based on problems that we've dealt with in the past that were the most critical problems.
Okay, but I would like to see us, if we're gonna look at passing this, I would like to see us address the storefronts.
Okay.
And I don't know if the committee has thought about that in this proposal.
Well, yeah, I mean, based on what Luther said, it sounds like those are currently covered under other ordinances, right, in terms of trespassing?
Not exactly, only partially. If it's on private property, it would be. Or if they're completely blocking the sidewalk, it would be. But if somebody's not doing either one of those, but they're laying down next to a doorway, for example, we don't have anything currently that would cover that.
So you're saying, like, I mean, many stores in Topeka have a parking lot in front of them, which is typically owned by that property owner.
Yes.
You're referring specifically to like Kansas Avenue, where the storefront leads directly into a right-of-way, more or less.
Right.
So, okay.
But if here's my storefront, here's my door, and they're here, there's nothing I can do, right?
Under this. Now, you could add, that's certainly been done in other ordinances that are a partial ban, is they add a covered area that you can't camp, for instance, within 10 feet of a doorway. And you could do something like that. We didn't include that in this, but there's no reason you couldn't. If that was something you wanted to do.
I personally would like to see something like that included, because that was a big thing, and I still get calls, when are you gonna pass that ordinance? And I try to express to them that we're looking at it, because I was told the officers can't do anything when they come down there but ask them to move.
Yeah, I mean, if it's one of those things where you have an individual that's curled up in the fetal position, sleeping like against the door of the business, well, then we have criminal trespass. But if they're just in the sidewalk, and again, just thinking of Kansas Avenue, in front of the business, then yeah, currently it's not illegal, as long as they're not completely obstructing the walkway.
So I would like to see us add something to that nature. Is there anything you would like to see in here, Karen?
I guess I wanted to get the briefing all the way through.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
figured that
I'm
we
sorry.
would talk about the list and any details on how it would work. Because I think one of the things that's in there is that we've got the definition of camping and what that means. If it means you got bedding under you, you are camping. If you don't have bedding under you, you're not. If, is it tents only? I I think this is really on the right track, but I wanted to kind of see how the whole thing kind of worked. I know there's language in there that says if it's on private property, you can't be there at all unless you have written permission from that private owner. You kind of have to know those things, and so how exactly that would get worked out with the officers or with persons who were looking for a place. I mean, there are questions through this, but a framework that, if we think it's a framework that we could work forward on, then we can start working out details, I thought. But
Continue.
happy to stop whenever.
The second place where the partial ban would apply would be as council member said, would be private property. And that was proposed in the original ordinance, and it was kept in this partial ban as well. And the idea is for undeveloped property, particularly out further from the downtown area, like along the Wanamaker corridor and places like that, where there's large tracts of undeveloped property. Many times the owners of those are very difficult for the police to track down on who owns that property. And the owners may not even be aware that the camp is there. And some of them, the camps are are quite extensive. What this would do is prohibit people from camping on those privately owned property unless they have written permission from the owner. And it would basically place that obligation to produce the written permission on the person doing the camping. And it would give law enforcement then the ability to do something about those people that were camping on that property without having to go through a very burdensome process of tracking down and contacting an owner that may not even live in the state or maybe a corporation. So that's why we kept that. The written permission piece of it, people that are doing recreational camping or some type of civic event or something like that, they can have written permission to do it, and then they would be just fine, and there'd be no issue with that.
Yes.
So, given the examples you were talking about earlier, that would maybe be a little trickier to figure out, but would include a front walk or a parking lot that was privately owned,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
A more developed, anything that's developed as well.
Right.
Okay.
Another reason why that's important is for a criminal trespassing type of case by law enforcement they're not able to generate that case by themselves because it's not their property and it's not their property interest that's being interfered with. They need a complaining party to initiate that complaint form saying, we don't want this person here. What this would do is it would give law enforcement the ability then to address the problem without necessarily having to do that. The person needs written permission in order to camp there. And if they don't, then they have to move their camp.
Okay.
The rest of the partial ban ordinance, it retains the same provisions for disposition of property, that if a person is camping in one of these prohibited areas and they don't move and they don't remove their possessions, then it keeps the same provisions for the police to impound that property and store it for a period of time. There's notice provisions that we have to give, 24 hours notice before we do it. And then after the property is impounded, we have to store it for 90 days and allow the person to reclaim the property. It was only after 90 days that it would be considered abandoned property, and then we'd be able to dispose of it. One thing we added into the partial ban that we thought would be helpful was there's a provision that allows law enforcement to dispose of property that is contaminated.
Yeah, I've
That's
seen
the
that.
issue that I've actually seen in other cities' ordinances, that they have that without that, we don't want to store everything that might get picked up in having to clean out a camp. Some of it would be a health and safety concern. If it's contaminated with bodily fluids or infested with pests of some kind, whether it's bed bugs or fleas or whatever. And this would give the law enforcement the ability to dispose of that property that is contaminated and is a health concern immediately without having to store that.
I'm good with that.
So the main thing, the main point with this, the partial ban is it is a switch in reducing the scope with the intentions of allowing other areas of the city to be used for camping, such as the riverfront and stuff like that, that people will still be able to camp there. And those areas would not be criminalized. That's all I have. If you have some questions.
Okay. Karen?
I try to go back to what bothered people in the first place, what they thought the problem was, and whether we are going to resolve it either on the homeless resident end or on the council end, so that ideally something is fair and productive. Some things that I think of, and I'm just going to rattle a few, are camping between the bridges anyway on the riverfront. There's already been a relocation on that because it was important. So we go back to that. People camping near the trails, on or near the bike and pedestrian trails, which troubled passersby. People with huge trashy sites, trash accumulations that we don't tolerate if it's somebody's home or their business, but people felt like they were kind of stuck. I'm sure the neighbors did, as well as certainly public officials, and so making sure that we had a way to say, if you're going to be here, you still have to follow our city's rules. And similarly with illegal behavior, so that people weren't frightened to be in the camps, or that others weren't frightened to be around. And so can loop back through those, but when I heard the conversation last Tuesday at the council meeting, it was like, this could be much simpler than the committee in the past had thought, if everyone's comfortable that the ordinances that we have, for instance, accumulating trash or having mud pits nearby or whatever, which is under the property maintenance code. I see that Mike is here. If those can be enforced in a homeless site as well, then it didn't seem unreasonable to say you have to live by the cleanliness standards that everybody else does if you want to be in our town, not just be homeless or be in a camp. And similar with illegal activities. Can somebody react to that? Was that part of the vision that you all had when you did this?
Well, I think anything that's in the code right now would apply to anybody who's within the city limits. So if it's a property maintenance issue, I think it would still apply. Now, you would have the same kind of issues that you have sometimes when you cite individuals who aren't capable of fixing up for one reason or another, whether it's because they're elderly or what have you. So if you want to issue citations for an IPMC violation to, a homeless individual, you could do that. I don't know what kind of, response we would get.
Somebody, this just came out, but pointed out that if it's publicly owned land, we can write up the occupant now on a property if they're the ones who are responsible. So you want to cut off your answer?
Sure. So private property, it's not hard for us at all to cite the property. When it comes to public property, it's identifying who that is. And if it's a transient person that's not there for more than a week, or if we go and we tell them you have X amount of days to clean it, if they're not there in X amount of days, who are we holding responsible for that product that they've left there? So that's where it's difficult to us, because it may or may not be their home. It may just be a place they're staying for a matter of days. So it's not so easy for us to cite it when it's on public property.
Okay.
And if you have several there, who are you going to cite? I mean,
Yeah.
if you got 20 people there and they all point the finger at the next person, I mean, I think that kind of would be difficult, although I understand where you're going with it, Karen.
I'm just trying to solve the issues that people had to say, okay, are we on a track to solve the issues that people had?
Previous experience, we're underneath the bridge when it got fired. We went over there and we cleaned it multiple times. Even though it wasn't our department's job to clean it, someone had to, so we went and picked up the trash. But when we asked the people staying there, whose stuff is this? The answer from every single person is, it's not mine. So nobody was taking claim of this. So when it's on public property, we don't know who it belongs to, and no one's gonna raise their hand saying, all the stuff that we threw over there that we don't want anymore, yeah, that's mine, I'll clean it up. So we have a real difficult time identifying who that pile of stuff that you're talking about when you're saying the trash and the accumulation belongs to.
Okay.
That's where a permitting situation would possibly help, even though it sounds bureaucratic. Thanks. And the police are doing that now, in terms of criminal behavior and people being threatening?
Can you be more specific on your question?
Well, there have been issues in the camps of people being worried about safety, and then people who observe the camps but are not familiar with the residents or the camps are worried about safety as well. So building into whatever this solution is, making sure that there's safety. So the question then would be, to the extent that you can, the police department now is working to address any illegal activity?
The answer is yes. I mean, am I concerned about the individual safety behind the mission and in other camps? The answer is yes. Do I think there's more criminal activity going on back there than is being reported to me? I think yes. However, what becomes difficult on my end is if I don't have a victim, I really don't have a crime. So what do I suspect? There's more going on back there than I'm told about. I do, but I don't have any physical proof, and I don't have a victim at this point in time. I'm down there on a quasi-regular basis, and I talk with most of the campers down there, and I can tell you I don't get reported to as far as a lot of crime occurring. I'll be told some general safety tips, especially since I'm down there. Just for my own personal safety, but I don't have people who will be like, hey, this happened to me, or I know so-and-so just beat up so-and-so. That doesn't occur around me very often.
And I understand everybody. I'm totally sympathetic, but we've got to wear this hat of trying to figure out what we're supposed to do.
Doug?
Chair Ortiz, I might ask, I don't want to jump ahead of ourselves, but I might ask Luther to talk about the permit process that Councilwoman Hiller just mentioned. Since that's been brought up, it might be worth talking about some of the challenges to implementing something like that.
The permit system, what was proposed and what we looked at was basically a system where people would be required to obtain a permit from the city in order to camp. We don't have a lot of details of it as of yet. It was mainly just an idea for consideration about what would that look like and how would we do it. And I think the concern with having a permit type system is for people that don't have the permit. What do? Implementing a permit system adds a layer of complication to banning camping. So if a permit's required, you have to have a permit in order to camp. What if you don't? Is there a penalty attached for that? Is it made a crime if they don't have the permit? Then we have to consider what barriers are we going to put in place for the permit itself. Does it cost? Do they have to travel to a certain location to get the permit? What type of process is involved in the application? Do they have to show ID or anything like of that nature? Then how long is the permit good for? And what happens once it expires? And all of these are simply another way of, they all end in system where a person is not allowed to sleep there anymore, either because they don't have a permit or the permit is expired. They can't stay there. Then what do we do? And the end result of a permit system really comes back to a camping ban. It's just a delay in getting there with an extra layer of bureaucracy. It was kind of the legal department's opinion on this, that
I don't agree with the permit because they probably don't have the money to get the permit. If they don't have jobs, when you look here, they don't have transportation, they don't have jobs. I mean,
Let me explain it, and then you
Ultimately-
can kick it around.
hold on
it's
just a
going to come
second, Karen.
back to
But I didn't
a
suggest it.
person not having an alternative. If they can't stay here because they don't have a permit or their permit's expired, where can they go? And that brings us back to the original problem that we've had all along with the lack of an alternative.
Okay, Karen?
Well, I threw that out, and you've added a whole lot of things that were in there that were, I thought through but got rid of. So if our rule is that people can camp indefinitely on public property, but we want to know who they are and where they are for their own safety, and if they're responsible for something that happens there, then if there's a place to get them, there was not a contemplation. We're putting a lot of time and expense into sending staff and others down there anyway, so it's not any more time. Would be just to allow a permit so that we knew who was camping and where they were. Again, we've got recreational camping pending as well. This is not just for folks who are homeless, people who would be on the river in a kayak or whatever. That we knew who was there and where they were. No fees involved. If people had it in advance, fine. Otherwise, if someone came across them, it'd be the police would have the capacity to give them the permit. You just have to have a permit if you're going to stay more than 2 nights. And that way, a photo of the campsite, of the person, their ID if they have it, and I forget there was one thing else. I mean, their stuff, so that the campsite was recognizable, we knew who they were, and that's it. It would allow some record for responsibility if the campsite was trashed. If it's nobody's campsite, then stuff goes away. So it was pretty simple, actually. I thought, if the police all they're carrying cell phones now. It's easy to take a picture of the person, take a picture of the campsite, take a picture of the ID, shoot it in, just do it. No new equipment, no fuss. Some place to just record them. And that's it.
The smartest thing I've heard y'all say.
Wait a minute.
You will have an opportunity, I promise. Okay?
Well, thanks. Anyway, just trying to figure out a way, if we were going to allow it, to manage it in a way that people do. And then I've done a lot of camping in my life, usually with permission of somebody, but not always. But where you're in a place with permission, there generally are rules. Leave the place as clean as you found it. Don't do anything to bother the neighbors. Use the sanitary facilities or make sure you're carting it out yourself. Have a nice day. Kind of that simple. And it just seemed like it could transfer over in a very simple way, whether that's somebody in their fancy outfit on a sandbar with their kayak pulled up alongside them, or somebody who's kind of throwing some stuff together and is out on the east side of the Mission.
She's a camper. Mr. Mays, what about your camping experience? Have you been fine? Do you
No,
carry away? What do? You get permission?
I prefer not to camp, honestly.
You don't rough it, huh?
Not very
I know
often.
the Gerbers down there. I know they've had some.
We go on one camping trip a year.
There you go. Mr. Gerber, did you want to add anything else?
No, thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else before we move on? Did you have more, Karen?
I can check later if you're wanting to move on. I wondered about that definition of camping. We've not defined it before, really. For the most part, we've been talking about making an assumption that if people in tents or, kind of a makeshift tent or something like that.
Well, I think it's defined on page 2. Am I correct, Luther?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, let's look at page 2 and let's talk about,
Well, I don't think it talks about a shelter. My concern, and we as a council are going to be addressing the issue of cars parked on unpaved surfaces again tomorrow, I think, but, we certainly don't mention vehicles or containers or things like that, and,
well, let's hear from Luther first. Let's go ahead and start there.
Well, the word camp, as used in this ordinance, is defined in a definition section at the beginning, and it's talking about using the specific property in question for one or more nights of living accommodation. And how we then go about defining what living accommodation is by example, that if they have accumulated sleeping material, such as sleeping bags, bedrolls, blankets, things like that. They have a tent, presence of a fire, cooking utensils, stuff like that. It's those things are given as an example of how we know that the person is engaged in that type of activity. It also covers living in a parked vehicle. Now, keep in mind, under the partial ban, the way we've limited to this is it would only apply to somebody sleeping in a parked vehicle in one of those specified areas, under a bridge or overpass, on a levee, or on private property without permission. We've taken out a lot of the scope of the original total ban.
I just think we need to check it, depending on intent.
Okay? Anything? Okay. All right. So at this time, what do we want to do with this ordinance? Do we want to review it, come back, accept it, reject, or amend it? I want to amend it and get them, what I would like to do is amend it for that storefront and come back and study it.
Are we allowed to speak before me? I'm sorry.
No, not yet, not yet. Do you guys want to hear from the constituents and then we talk about it?
Up to you, Chair.
Okay. Karen? Okay. All right. How many people want to speak? Okay, we have 4 people? Okay. 3 minutes. Okay, okay. So you'll have to come to the podium, please. State your name. And we're talking about the proposed ordinance. What we're proposing.
Well, yes, sir. How you doing? My name is Albert Thomas, and when I came down here, I went to the VA hospital in Omaha, Nebraska, but I was supposed to come down to Topeka. The Topeka VA hospital has not came and checked on me. So the guy over there, Dave, he went and said, well, he had something going on trying to work with home. And I think it's a good idea because there's 4 porta potties out there. Remember, I bought one. And, it's just, I think it's a great idea because the VA hospital still has not came to check on me at once. They came out there, still has not come to see what's wrong. I think it's lovely. The shelter, where you go up there, I went up there to get some water one night. Man was so rude, said something about the VA, about veterans. And more or less, I could have went off on him, but I didn't. I think it's a great idea because as far as people doing messed up things, no. I'm retired military police and fought Panama and Desert Storm, so I don't see nothing wrong with the way what's going on out there. Because, man, Carbon Hill, because I don't know anybody, we keep it pretty clean out there. Take it up on people out there, need to take it up on their own to go out there. I bought a porta potty, so it's a toilet out there anyway before they put the 3 out there. And plus, I am a veteran. VA hospital still has not came and checked on me. Some people are too lazy to push a button, more or less. I kind of like it. It's all right. I didn't say forget it, get up, go home. If I want to, no. I'm helping him. So I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
So, you guys
Thank
have
you.
a good day. Thank you.
Next.
Hi, my name is Pamela Burkhart. I'm not homeless anymore, but I was out there 12 years, and it's not camping, it was living. Camping is going fishing and everything. I will not ever put a tent up ever again. And the city, the mess, there are residentials that are really, really messed up. I've seen the code compliance going around taking pictures and everything and giving them a certain time where they have to have everything clean. And some of them do, some of them don't. So, you know, yeah, some campsites are very messy. And yeah, some of them should be told that they need to do or out, but don't penalize everybody. My campsite, I burnt my trash. I burnt my fetus. I had a fire. I had a fire for cooking. I had a fire for that. Crime, there was a man just arrested the other day, jumping out of a window for burglary. I don't see none of that happening down there, no murders. I mean, I don't understand why there's so many that were against that. And Misty, I can remember Hastings, she had this great idea about this building, and she had it ready to open up the doors, and all of a sudden it just got closed. And I don't understand what happened on none of that, but it was volunteer work. I could volunteer, because that was a great idea. It would be enough to have 5 people in there, get them off the street, get them to where I'm at. You know, I can't work. I've tried. I got applications out there. I do. But I don't think anybody's going to hire me for my health. I just got my insurance. I was approved of my insurance, and I'm waiting on my card. And from then, I already got my lawyers and everything on my SSI, and I'm waiting on that. It's pending. I want other people. They're out there. They want to be where I'm at. And I was going out there and telling people all about this last time I was here talking. And now everything just like the door got shut down on them. And there's just no more funds, no more funds. But get rid of the homeless. Get rid of the homeless. Kick them out. And the downtown Nodo, I'm so sorry, but people have been littering way before that. I ever had a tent down there, way before that. It's not us throwing it away. People walk down the street throwing things away. Was that a homeless person? No. You never smelled me. I never stank. And I bathed every day. I didn't have running water in my tent, but you sure didn't smell me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
And thank you for my home.
Did you hear that, Corey? Next.
So, how about a tale of 2 cities? What if we decided to make camping illegal on private property in some other areas? Or what if we continued to improve the living conditions of the homeless folks and to provide shelter plus care vouchers? Well, let's see, what was the stated goal? In the beginning, I believe, Councilwoman Ortiz, you said, Chair Ortiz, you said you wanted to help the unsheltered population as much as possible. So how have you done with your goal? Well, let's see. 40 plus, 50 plus organizations are involved in helping the homeless. You got 30 people housed in homes. 90% plus are staying in those homes. Chronically homeless people. People have been homeless for a dozen years or more. You got 2 women that were in domestic violence situations that are now in safe homes. You got 2 homes that got reconstructed. They got their kids back because they had shelter plus homes. You got 3 people working. You got 2 people working full time. You got people looking for jobs. You got at least 4 families that got to visit their kids or their grandkids. You only lost 3 individuals. Visits to ER rooms are down. Visits to healthcare providers are up. Visits to mental health care providers are up. You got people actively in substance use treatment. That's what Housing First is supposed to do. And that's what it does. So how did you do on your goal? You did outstanding. You did dynamite. I mean, this is like the best news for the homeless since sliced bread. It's absolutely amazing. What if you went the other way? What if you decided to make camping illegal in private property, for example? Well, let's see, what would that do? Well, let's see, since there's a lot of homeless people that are camped on private property right now, that would drive them into, well, where would they go? Oh, they'd go to city property. Or then they'd maybe be on the sidewalks more. Let's see, maybe they might camp on more city property, they'd push them more into view. make it difficult for the homeless population, which of course I assume is the goal of making that illegal, because making camping illegal on private property would make it very difficult for the homeless people. Plus, it would make it difficult for the outreach that goes down there. It would make it a lot more difficult. I don't know if you know where the city property lines are and stuff down there, but it would push people right on the edge of the river, right next to the river. The way that river's been this year, I can't tell you how many people have already been flooded out of the river on the city property line down there. I don't think you want to put people in there. That's not an improvement in the situation. So in general, you know, it's your city. There's two views of a city here: a city that's doing it right and helps people improve their lives and move forward and actually addresses, solves the homelessness for them. Or you can make it illegal, more difficult for the city, and push those folks more into view and make everybody in a more difficult situation. Y'all's call. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next.
One more or not?
Next. Going once. Going twice. Close. We're done. Okay. Thank you for your testimonies, Dr. Russell. I'm pleased with what we've done, but I'm not satisfied because we still have a lot of homeless. And our count is up. What is our count?
I mean, everything's still a guesstimation. I would guess we have around 50 in the North Topeka encampment. You have a smaller one, maybe 3 to 5, 3 to 7 near the North Walmart. There's sprinkled along the Shunga Trail, and then there's a couple of small camps along Wanamaker. Citywide, I mean, I would probably guess this in the 100 if I had to just throw out a number, but it's purely a guess.
Okay. All right.
I mean, frankly, counting bandos and so forth, I'd make it higher. I guess it'd be 200, but there's probably only about 25 people right on the river right down there now, maybe 30.
Well, seems like our number went up. Now it's going down.
It has definitely gone down since the last time we had our meeting. I think we were a little over 100 people
Yeah.
last time. I mean, it's gone down dramatically since then.
Right.
People got really flooded out that one day, right?
I think the flood was part of it. I think that railroad scare, the misinterpretation of when the railroad came down, I think that was part of it as well. The weather is starting to change. I mean, it's still pretty nice out, but I think people are realizing that it's going to get cold soon. So I think that's all accumulated effect.
Okay. All right. So where do we want to go with this? Let's have a discussion about it.
I would be interested in hearing from the homeless task force folks, and assuming we're going to meet again about this. They're working so much. Obviously, it's growing in terms of their capacity to solve. I mean, if we continued what's been happening, is that good enough? Or is it kind of a momentum that then would run out of steam and fall apart? I think that's what in part, what we need to figure out.
Well, Karen, I've been to those meetings and I see more people continuously getting on board. Again,
Right.
and correct me if I'm wrong, the thing that I see, it goes back to funding. We just don't have the funds to do what we need to do. They don't have the fundings. And when I look at all these organizations, because you're going to be surprised at that list, Stormontville, everybody you can think of is on that list, from Red Cross to, I mean, it's amazing. But again, we can't all tie in and get funding, and I think that's the biggest thing. So I think that they will continue to do what they do, and they will continue to try to solve ways and to try to figure it out. But that's going to be a hurdle. Yes. Yes. Can you come to the podium for my people at home?
I'm Carrie Higgins, Chair of the Homeless Task Force. I think this year we have just made huge strides in helping the homeless population, not only through the tent city. Kind of our first step was gathering information. We needed to know what barriers were out there so that we could start helping to get rid of those and make changes. We've got the Shelter Plus program, Shelter Plus Care program, that's ongoing. And then we also have the new Impact Avenues program that's going to work more with students, but that'll affect the homeless population as well. So this year has just been huge as far as agencies coming together, more collaboration, more community involvement, and really making a difference and making a change. And I only can see that continuing to get better and better. Yes.
I was thinking about the new Impact Avenue as well as the swell of initiatives for victims of trafficking.
Yep.
Which everybody says, well, we'll just get all those agencies to do all these things. So could you talk to us about capacity then? Because nonprofits are incredible about stretching and getting things done, but in reference to what she said.
Funding is always an issue. I feel like this year we have just really come together and worked more collaborative, which then stretches everyone's budget, everyone's dollars further.
Right.
With the Impact Avenues model is more of a collective model where we all come together. And we've seen that a little bit with like the Tent City and the Block Party and whatnot. That really was a collaboration of multiple agencies to make that happen. Funding will always be an issue.
Always, because I didn't want to lead you either way, but if coming together has created, the collaboration has created capacity that maybe people didn't think they had.
Corey, anything you want to add?
Sure. Just trying to figure out whether we got a problem or not, if you know what I'm saying. And I know that's hard because nonprofits always need money.
I think again, like Carrie said, as a member of the homeless task force, I think we had like almost 60 people at the last meeting. Every month it gets bigger and bigger, more and more agencies. So we'll be happily give you that list. But the collaboration does kind of expand our capacity. So when Sergeant Clam was talking about like employment as a factor, and I'm like, oh, I know a couple people at employment agencies. It's those kinds of conversations that we're all having together. We're talking with our constituents and involving them in the process. And so I think we've made great strides. I don't know that it addresses the concerns that were brought to your attention at the beginning of this process, but I think if we're talking about the most vulnerable people in Topeka, we really are making a big difference, all of us in the city, everybody present.
So you have 60 as a number, and you said 40?
She said 55.
55? I'm going to say 75. Last time I looked at that list, I'm going to say 75. So when we come back, we'll see who won.
All right, I'm going to win.
But send me the list. Make sure there's not just your 55.
We're going to add a few people if
that's
it's
what I figured.
Well, if I'm hearing what Councilwoman Ortiz is saying, which is very valid, as we're trying to step forward and do the right thing for everybody, we don't want to, for lack of a better term, dump it on you and say, okay, fine, they've got it. It's not, if that's not going to solve issues for the homeless folks and the networks that they've been building, or for you, we don't want to do that. But if we've got something going that is sustainable, that you all feel you can manage and can manage the additional, hopefully it wouldn't continue to grow, we're pretty high for the numbers, then great.
I think the momentum is really strong right now, and I hope it continues to do that. And I think this committee and the formation of this, whether good or bad, has created some positive outcomes for the homeless population.
Thank you. Yes.
And if I could just add, I do think the collaboration is fantastic that we have with the Homeless Task Force, but when it does come back to funding, I just want to throw out, if there's 60 to 70 people on there, that doesn't mean there's 60, 70 budgets on there. Like, for example, I'm part of the Homeless Task Force, and I have zero say over our department's budget. So the collaboration is awesome, but funding is also always going to be an issue, especially when we talk about housing and things of that nature. So just wanted to throw that out.
Yeah, we got to keep talking, though. Got to keep talking. Karen, what
You
did
had
say?
a couple of hands in the back, that's all.
Okay.
I would like to know if, instead of getting up there and talking about it, can we get a written proposal?
Can you get our proposed?
A written proposal as to what to do? Can we submit one to y'all?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Great, what a good idea.
Okay. Yes.
I mean, I believe Corey and the homeless task force and so forth, there's a mechanism here by which we can bring people off the street. As Corey suggested, the Housing First model would be 3 people a month. I'm hoping that we can eventually get it to 4. But we can bring 4 people a month, 1 a week, off the streets with the model that we have, with some support from Barry and Vallejo and things like that, which we had before. We can do 1 a week, which is 50 a year. We have that in place. Basically, that's what we were working with. The holdup is simply that we've overwhelmed the city with Shelter Plus Care vouchers, and every organization that uses those vouchers is just sitting around waiting for them to come available. So we have the organization in place, and with what they're doing down with the block parties, that's just like an Impact Avenue, but once a month or once every so many months, they'll be bringing people to the homeless folks that need stuff. So I believe there's lots of visions here and lots of things happening, and people are doing the right thing.
Thank you.
Just we need those vouchers.
Thank you. We can't move vouchers without moving money. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that we continue to look at this. I know you probably don't want to hear that, but, and look at the amendment that I had on the storefront. Do you have any amendments you want to throw out there before we come back and look at this again?
No, I will say though that, you know, what I see here with the partial ban, I guess as we're calling it, you know, the things that I like are that it protects our infrastructure. I mean, the bridge fire, I think, kind of brought this to the forefront. And I know there's been vandalism in bus stations, not necessarily by homeless people, but it is costing the city money to have, you know, people in those shelters after dark that have vandalized them. And so, you know, protecting the public infrastructure, certainly the levee is something that needs to be protected. I mean, the safety of everyone in North Topeka is reliant on that levee system. So, you know, I like that. I think that the portion you mentioned about private property camping, I think is not ready for prime time yet.
I agree. Karen?
I'm just eager to kind of process that, hear any further feedback that people have. I'm happy to come back with it. Maybe the levee ban covers that area between the rivers. I don't want us to fall back on some progress that we've made, or between the bridges.
Right.
I don't know how much of that is levee and how much isn't. If everybody else does, then I just need to be educated. Things like
Lisa,
that.
is that something you and Luther can do for us? Or,
Yeah, actually, I think I have,
or Doug? I don't know.
back when we
levee
first
system,
did
like a
this.
map?
Yes, we have the map of where all the property ownership is, so I can just pull that information back out, because I'm fairly certain I have that from when we were kind of first looking at it. So I'll pull that back out.
Okay. Okay, will you follow up on that for me?
Yes, just as kind of a follow-up, we want to make sure we're responsive to what this committee is needing. So it sounds like you want to have another committee meeting before recommending to the governing body. What information do you need from this group so that we can get this moving forward,
Well,
one way or another?
Okay, what I want is, I want to address the storefront, some language in this proposal that would address that.
The 10-foot doorway issue?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It looked like we just wanted what did you say, Karen, the riverfront, or the,
Well, they have the levee system, flood control works and the levee system in here.
On
I'm
page
just not quite sure in that very first section,
what page is that on?
page 1.
Page
There
1.
there is a fence down
Hold on, sir. Page 15, is that where you're,
Camping on, the partial ban, as the staff has written it, would simply say any place in public except bus shelters, bridges, overpasses, and flood control works such as the levee system. I don't know what that means, and I don't know, we actually have the Shunganugga, we have all sorts of flood control areas throughout the whole city. So we would need maybe a map or some sort of better definition of what that is, as would everybody else.
So an Exhibit A almost that shows the map of the system.
Flood control works.
This would be the Weir probably.
Well, I just think about, I mean, I know where the 100-year
Yes.
floodplain is huge. I don't know if that's what that means, though. And so if it's just wherever, whatever that means, we need to see a map so everybody knows.
And then in terms of the follow-up from Councilman Mays' comment that the public piece isn't quite ready for prime time. Or private, I'm sorry.
That was on private.
Help us flush that out, maybe. Or maybe everyone's understanding and I'm not, but.
Maybe he could explain more.
Councilman Mays?
Well, I mean, I think for me, it kind of goes back to what Sergeant Clam was saying earlier, that you need a victim. And this, right now, as it was explained to me, seems like a solution in search of a problem in some ways that, you know, ultimately we're saying we can't find the owners of these properties. I mean, how do we know if somebody does provide written permission that it's actually from the property owner?
It's not forged, yeah.
I think there's a lot of questions that need to be worked out in that. And I know that this committee's not going away if we pass this. I mean, it's going to continue meeting and continue meeting. I don't think it's inappropriate for us to, you know, pass if we decide to pass anything, if we, you know, kick out what's ready to be voted on by the full council, or at least proposed to the full council, and hold off on some other pieces. There's a good chance that whatever we do move out of this committee goes to the council and they send it right back to us. I mean, that happens a lot. So, you know, I think it might be worth at least sending the majority of it out at some point to see what the will of the council is, because, you know, we can only accomplish so much here.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
With that, I mean, I wasn't on this committee the first year that it worked, but I think I remember that some of the photos that people had at the time were fairly elaborate campsites, maybe out like behind Denny's on Wanamaker or something like that. People can help me out with nods or whatever. Anyway. Pardon?
When they have the tents outside, like Denny's, that's usually for like day after Thanksgiving sales and such.
Oh.
They do special ticketing events, like.
Well, there were some that were back in some treat areas. And
Harry Potter movies often have like 2-day campouts.
there you go. Well, something to keep in mind for camping ordinances. Anyway, if the staff might want to bring forward what you had in mind for those the private properties that were of issue. Because we know that there's this delicate balance, somebody talked about it today, of if you push it too much in one place, then people are just going to go over and find another place. And so if we've got a pretty good balance going right now, we want to either codify it or I'd leave it alone. But did you have some particular places in mind, examples for us right now before we break, or you need to do some research?
Well, I mean, if you're looking for a specific example, like for example, there's a small camp up by the North Walmart. I'm fairly confident they're on private property, but it's an abandoned site. All of theirs is a foundation and trees. And so if you're looking for, you know, for whatever reason to, you know, they would have to have permission by the landowner, because it'd be very difficult for us as law enforcement to figure out who that landowner is. I've never looked it up, but you know, a lot of times you look it up on the property website, there's a company, you know, some LLC. Well, if you get that, you're not going to have someone typically that's going to say yay or nay. If there's, for whatever reason, we were having issues with that camp, which we're not, but yeah, I mean, that's just what I know is on private property, probably without permission. So.
One right now, then.
Yes.
Yeah. To be very frank about the private property issue, I mean, if you look just southeast of the Mission right there, where the vast majority of the folks down on the river are camped, probably 15 of them camped in that area, and that area is owned by Marie Cortez, it's owned by the Mission, it's owned by, no, it's wrong, it's owned by the Mission, it's owned by Marie Cortez, it's owned by the Mission, and it's owned by some LLC canning place. All that's private property. So for the vast majority of the folks that I know that are down on the river, this would be devastating to them. Hillbilly in particular, his chainsaws, his wheelbarrows, he's got a bike for shops down there where people go and work on their bikes. He's got, I mean, it's a whole it's a home with a garage and everything else down there. All that would be in jeopardy. All that would be in danger.
Thank you.
Okay, that's something to consider. Anything else? Anybody else? You all right, Mikey, over there? You're in the corner. You've been a bad boy. Okay, if there's nothing further, we are adjourned. Thank you.